back to my channel. In today's video, we'll see how to manage Kubernetes in Google Cloud. This is a challenge lab. This is for 1 hour 30 minutes. In this lab, you get a chance to work on multiple tasks. So as part of this lab, we'll be creating a GKE cluster. Then we'll enable manage Prometheus on the GKE cluster. Later, we will deploy an application into the GKE cluster. Then we'll create a log space metric and alerting policy. Post that, we will make some modification to the application and we'll deploy that application. Then we'll also see how to containerize the code and deploy it into the cluster. So let's click on Start Lab. Now the lab is provisioned. You can click on Open Google Cloud Console and log in with the student username and the password. So let's proceed with the challenge. So this is a challenge. As part of the sandbox environment, your developers have created an artifact registry repository named demo repo. So they already have created this demo repo, which is having some sample code which we can use to deploy our application onto the cluster. So we need to refer to this and we can download this code from the bucket. So this will be making use in the upcoming task. So let's proceed with task 1, create a GKE cluster. Here we will be creating a cluster by this name in the zone US West 1 and release channel should be regular. Cluster version should be 1.27.8 or the newer version, and we need to enable autoscaler for this cluster with number of nodes as 3 and minimum nodes should be 2 and maximum node should be 6. So I'll be making use of command line interface to perform this lab. Since we need to update few of the YAML files and deploy the application, command line interface is the best approach to follow in this lab. So this is a GitHub link which contains the steps to perform this lab. I'll be sharing this GitHub link in the video description so you can follow along when you're doing this lab. So first we will set some environment variables since we will be making use of these variables in the upcoming task. So we will be exporting this environment variables repo name. Repo name is demo-repo. So this is already created by the development team. So we will be exporting this variable and then we'll be setting the cluster name. So whatever cluster name you get in your lab, you ensure that you replace with that cluster name. And the zone in this lab is US West 1. So I'll be setting that zone and we will be creating namespace as well. So that namespace details you will get in your lab. You can replace this service name as well and the project ID. Whatever project ID you get in your lab, you ensure that you update it accordingly. Before starting the task only, I will be setting this environment variables. So let's copy this, go back to dashboard here. You can click on activate Cloud Shell. So now we have exported these environment variables. Next, before proceeding with the task 1, we need to set the configuration. So we'll be executing this gcloud auth login and the project ID will be, so you need to ensure you replace it with the project ID. Copy this project ID. So this way you need to execute gcloud auth login config set, type as so here you get the password. So you can copy this, go back and paste it here. So now it is updated. Next we need to create a cluster with this name. So before creating a cluster, we need to enable API. So this is a container API which we are enabling it. So you can copy this and enable that required API. So once that is done, you can execute this command gcloud container clusters create and the cluster name. So it will be referring to the environment variable here, whatever we have set, the cluster name. So it will refer to that value and it will create that cluster with that name, and the zone as well. We have already defined it in an environment variable. It will fetch that value and it will create the cluster in that zone. Release channel, we are passing it as regular, and the cluster version I am giving the IS version. Enable autoscaling. So if you set this flag, it will enable the autoscaling. Here we can set the number of nodes to 3 and minimum nodes to 2 and max nodes to 6. So let's copy this command. So now you can see it's creating the cluster. And now the cluster is created. So you can find the details of the cluster here, the cluster name, in which location it's been created and which version it's been created, and the machine type, node version, and the status of the cluster. So you can find it all the details here. So you can go back here and you can click on check my progress, and this should be complete. So once that is done, next in task 2, enable manage Prometheus on the GK cluster. As part of the e-commerce website strategy, symbol shops would like to start using manage Prometheus for metrics and monitoring on the cluster to ensure a good experience for the customers. In this section, you will enable Manage Prometheus on the cluster for metric monitoring and create a namespace to deploy a sample Prometheus application and pod monitoring on. So in this task, we need to enable the Prometheus managed collection on the GKE cluster, then create a namespace on the cluster. So with this name, we need to create a namespace. So whatever name you get, you ensure that you create that namespace in the specific cluster. Then we need to download the sample Prometheus app. So this is where they have stored it. This is the bucket location in which they have stored this YAML file. This we will download into our local machine. So once we download that, we need to update a few of the configuration. So the container's image and the container name and the port name. So this we need to update it. Once we update that, we need to deploy this application in this specific namespace. Once that is done, then we will download this pod monitoring YAML file. So this YAML file will contain the configuration specific to monitoring. So they have already written this YAML file which is stored in the storage bucket, that we will be downloading it into our local machine, which is nothing but the Cloud Shell. So after downloading that YAML file, we have to do some modification. So we have to set this configuration metadata name to Prometheus test labels. So this way we have to change the configuration to this. Then we need to apply the pod monitoring resource on this namespace on the cluster. So everything we are doing it on the namespace which we created. So let's perform this activity as well. So once the cluster is created, you can execute this command to verify the cluster. So when you execute this command, it will show a long detail of the cluster. So if you want to do, you can just execute this command. Now I'll proceed with task to enable manage Prometheus on the GKE cluster. So first we need to enable the service for Prometheus. For that, I'll be executing this command gcloud container clusters update. So we are updating the cluster and we are enabling the Prometheus for this cluster. So here we are passing the $cluster name. So it will refer to the cluster name you have set in the environment variable. And then the zone also we need to pass, in which zone we have created the cluster, it has to refer, right? So that's why we need to pass the -- zone flag and pass the zone details here. And then we need to set this flag enable manage Prometheus. So basically we are enabling the Prometheus service on this cluster. So let's copy this. So you should get this output updating HelloWorld. So this is the cluster name. So now the Prometheus service has been enabled. We can go back. Next, we need to create the namespace. Need to pass this command kubectl create namespace followed by the namespace name. So you can copy this. So you can see this namespace has been created. Let's go back. Next, we need to deploy the sample Prometheus app. So we need to download the manifest file. So this is the first file which we will be downloading it from the storage bucket. So using command gsutil. For storage bucket and all, we need to use this command gsutil. CP is nothing but copy from this path to the current directory. So under my student home directory, I will be downloading that file. So let me copy this, execute it here. So now you can see it has copied this. Operation completed. You should get me this message. So when you run ls, it will show that file. So now you can see this Prometheus app.yaml file has been downloaded to the current present working directory. So here we need to update the Prometheus app.yaml with the below code snippet containers. So we need to update the image name here and the container name and the ports. If you want to edit this file, you can click on open editor. So here you can see under start open home directory. So you can click on open home directory. It will open that home directory and whatever files is there, it will list here. So you can find this Prometheus app.yaml. So this is very easy, like as we use this Visual Studio Code, same way we can use it the editor here. So it will be very simple to make the changes. So here you can see line number 34 to do hyphen image. So here we can copy this image name, update it here, and the name, it should be Prometheus hyphen test. So update this as well. Next ports, container port should be 8080 and the name should be metrics. So you can update that as well here, metrics. Container port should be 8080. This set of configuration you need to update it. Once you update this, you can save this. So once you update that, you can click on open terminal. So now we can do ls, then cat that file. Whatever we have updated, it is still present. So let me clear the screen. Once the Prometheus app.yaml file is updated, we need to deploy the application on this specific namespace. So we'll be executing kubectl apply -f followed by this file name. So Prometheus app.yaml, it will be reading that file and it will be deploying the application on this specific namespace. So let's copy this command, go back to dashboard. So as you can see, the deployment apps Prometheus test has been created. So now we can see this is created. To verify the deployment, we can execute this command kubectl get pods followed by the namespace. Since we have deployed the application to the namespace, we have to pass this namespace flag. So as you can see, there are 3 pods running. So whatever we have defined in the Prometheus app.yaml, so here we have specified replicas as 3. So that's why it is running 3 pods over there. So it will read the configuration from this YAML file and it will deploy the application as per this. Next, we need to apply the pod monitoring. So the pod monitoring YAML file is placed in this specific storage bucket that we will be downloading it using this command. So let's copy this command, go back to this. So this is another YAML file. So when we do ls, you can see this pod monitoring.yaml. The name needs to be updated, app name. So all this, whatever is there in to do, all this needs to be updated. So I'll be copying this here. Paste the one which you have copied. Once done, you can click on open terminal, clear the screen, ls, cat, pod monitoring.yaml. So now you can see this has been updated. Now we have made the changes to the pod monitoring.yaml. Once that is done, we need to apply the pod monitoring resource. By executing this command kubectl apply -f and the pod monitoring YAML file we need to specify because it will be reading the configuration from that YAML file. You need to specify the namespace. Copy this, go back here. Now it's created. You can verify that by executing this command kubectl get pod monitoring. So that's a name, right? So now you can see this is a one. So this task is complete now. You can click on check my progress. This should be complete. Now let's proceed with task 3. Deploy an application onto the GKE cluster. The development team at Symbol Shops will be consistently releasing new application code to the cluster that you will have to successfully deploy into production. In this section, you will deploy Kubernetes manifest onto the cluster and inspect the issue. Download the demo deployment manifest file. So we have this manifest file stored under this location. So we will be downloading that manifest file to deploy our application onto the cluster. Next, we need to create a deployment onto this namespace in the GK cluster from the hello deployment.yaml manifest file. So this manifest file, we will get it from the here only. So we'll be making use of that manifest file to create a deployment. So let's proceed with this task. Copy this command. So it has downloaded all these YAML files. You can do ls of that. So here you can see hello-app folder. So if we cd to that, you can find all the files here. Let me clear the screen. So if you do ls, so here you can find the YAML file, locker file, main.go, manifest. So this manifest file will be referring to cd manifest ls. So if I open editor, so this is the hello-app folder. Inside that we have this manifest files. So this is the deployment.yaml file. So now we have downloaded that. Once that is done, we need to deploy the application. So we need to cd to hello app manifest folder. So I am already under that path. So when I do pwd, so you can see I am inside this path here. We need to execute this command kubectl apply -f, and we will be referring to deployment.yaml, and we will be deploying the application. So let's copy this, go back. Now the deployment is created. So if you want to verify the deployment, you can execute this command kubectl get deployments. You always have to ensure that you pass the -, namespace flag, because in that namespace only we are performing all these operations. So you have to ensure you provide the namespace name there. So here you can see HelloWeb and Prometheus -test. So these two applications we have deployed it earlier, so that it is listing here. So once that is done, we need to inspect the error. So as you can see, there is an error. Verify you have created deployment and navigate to the HelloWeb deployment details page. You should see the following error. So this error seems to stem from an invalid image name in the manifest that you just deployed. Before you fix the image name, you will create a log space metric and alerting policy so that your team can be notified if this happens again in the future. So there is an error with this deployment. We need to inspect that error. So to verify that, we can go to Kubernetes engine, click on workload here. Okay, so this is the one. We have deployed these two workloads, right? These two app we have deployed. So this is does not have minimum availability. So this is the one. Status details for HelloWeb. Failed to apply default image tag to do. Couldn't parse image name to do. Invalid reference format. Invalid image name. So let me open the editor here and show you the HelloWeb deployment.yaml. So here under container section, line number 37, image we have not specified, it is just having to do. So this is causing that error. So whatever error we are seeing here, it is caused because of that. So here it is unable to find the image tag with this to do. So we need to fix this issue. We have deployed that application as part of this task 3. You can click on check my progress. This should be complete. Next, task 4, create a log space metric and alerting policy. So let's create this. Create a log-based metric. In the Logs Explorer, create a query that exposes warnings or errors you saw in the previous section on the cluster. Your query should have just one resource type and one severity selected. So let's perform that. So we will go here. We have two deployments here. So this is the one with the error. So this is that error. If you click on this, this is error, failed to apply default image tag to do, couldn't pass image name to do. So if you click on details here, just scroll down. So this is a cluster, and you find the cluster details, and this is a container. This container is having this status. So click on view logs here. Under resources, Kubernetes pod. Select the location, and this is the pod name. So invalid image name, this is the error which we are getting. Invalid image name, and the type is warning. I need to run query like this. Resource type is create spot, severity is warning. So it will show the warning messages here. So here under actions, click on create metrics. and metric type will be counter, and log based metric name will be log metric name should be this pod-image errors. So let's copy this, go back here, provide a name here. Next you can click on create metric. So once that is created, here you can go to log based metrics, click on log based metrics. So here you can find this is a matrix which we have created, pod image errors. Click on more actions. Next we need to create alert from metric. So click on create alert from metric. Now we are creating alerting policy. So policy configuration mode, it will be builder. So this is a metric, we have selected it. So rolling window, it will be 10 minute. Rolling window function will be, so here click on drop down, select count. Time series aggregation will be sum. Click on next. So here we find the condition types threshold. Under alert trigger, it will be any time series violates, and threshold position will be above threshold. Threshold value will be 0. Condition name you can give anything. You can click on next. Notification channel. So use notification channel disable. So they don't want notification channel. So you can click on disable. And alert policy name will be pod error alert. So copy this. You can click on create policy. So now the alert policy pod error alert has been saved. So now it's created. You can come back here, click on check my progress. This should be complete. So now this task is also complete. Let's move ahead with task 5. Update and redeploy your app. The development team would like to see you demonstrate your knowledge on deleting and updating deployments on the cluster in case of an error. In this section, you will update a Kubernetes manifest with a correct image reference, delete a deployment, and deploy the updated applications onto the cluster. Replace the to-do in the image section in the HelloWorld deployment YAML deployment manifest with the following image. So they already have this HelloWorld deployment YAML file. We need to update this image name there. Then delete the HelloWorld deployment from the cluster. Then again deploy the updated YAML file. So let's perform this. So I am back to my Cloud Shell. If you do pwd, I am under the Hello app manifest file. Here we need to update this YAML file, HelloWorld deployment.yaml. So this file we need to update. Click on open editor. So let's go inside this Hello manifest, HelloWorld deployment.yaml. So this file had an issue. So that time we didn't update the image. It was just to do. Because of this, there was an error with this specific pod. So we will be updating this image name. So let's copy this and update it. Once the image is updated, we need to delete the existing deployment and again perform the deployment with the updated YAML file. So let's do that. So for that, you need to execute this command kubectl delete deployment and the deployment name and the namespace in which it is created. So let's copy this. So now we can see this deployment has been deleted. After the deployment is deleted, we need to deploy the updated manifest file. So for that, we need to execute this command kubectl apply followed by the deployment YAML file. We have just updated that YAML file. So let's copy this. So now it's created. So we can verify the deployment by executing this command kubectl get deployments. So now we can see it is available, it's running. So if I minimize this, go back to Kubernetes engineer. So you can click on workloads here. Now that error should be gone. Now you can see this HelloWorld deployment is not having any issue. The status is okay here. So this is not having any issue. So you should verify that it is deployed correctly with no errors. So this should be the output and we have verified it. You can click on check my progress. And this is complete now. Let's proceed with task 6. Containerize your code and deploy it onto the cluster. Lastly, as part of the Symbol Shop's e-commerce strategy, the application team will be providing your code that you will need to containerize and store it in a registry and then update the cluster with the newest version of that code. In this section, you will containerize your application code, update an image in artifact registry and set that to the image on your cluster. Your team has a repository in artifact registry name sandbox-repo that contains a containerized version of the Hello app sample app in Docker. You will update the code for the build locally, then push the new version to the repository. So let's perform this operation. Here click on main.go. On line 49 change the versions to version 2.0.0. So here on line 49 we need to change it to 2.0.0. This is the one. So once this is done, we can save this file. So now we have updated it. Next, use the hello app docker file to create a docker image with a v2 tag. Push the newly built docker image to a repository in artifact registry using the v2 tag. Set the image on your hello web deployment to reflect the v2 image you push to artifact registry. Expose the hello web deployment to a load balancer service name hello web on port 8080 and set the target port of the container to the one specified in the docker file. Then we need to navigate to the external load balancer IP address of this service and we should see this message. So let's perform that. Now let's build the docker image using the docker file using the command docker build -t followed by the image name. So -t is nothing but a tag. So let's copy this command. So ensure you are under this path. So let's execute this command. So this is complete now. After this you can just clear the screen. Next we will push the image to artifact registry. So let's copy this command. We have completed this step. Next we need to set the image on your hello web deployment to reflect the v2 image you push to artifact registry. Then we need to expose it. So for that again we need to edit this hello web deployment YAML file and then update the image field with this. Let's copy this, go back here, hello deployment.yaml. So here we need to update this. So you can save this and go back to terminal. We need to execute this command kubectl apply followed by the YAML file name and the namespace. So this YAML file is inside manifest. So we have to be inside manifest to execute this command. Now this should work. This is configured. Once that is done, we need to expose this deployment with a load balancer. So I'll be running this command kubectl expose deployment name followed by the namespace flag and the service names. It will pick the service name from that environment variable and the type will be load balancer, port should be 8080, target port 8080. So let's copy this command. You should get this message, the service is exposed. So you can get the details about this service by executing this command kubectl get service followed by the service name and the namespace. So here you can see this is the service which got created and it is exposed. So external IP is still pending. Once we get the external IP, we can verify this message. So we should get this message. So now we have this external IP. So we can copy this external IP. So you should type that external IP address followed by the port number and you should get this message HelloWorld and the version. So it is the second version which we have deployed and the host name. So you should get message something like this. So we are getting that message. Once done you can click on check my progress and this should be complete. If you find any difficulties performing any of the tasks in this lab, you can post your comments under comment section in this video. I'll be happy to help. So once you are done with this lab you can click on end lab. If you found my video helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel and stay up to date with the latest content on this channel. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next video.